Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Eric Lofholm, and Eric has taught his proven sales systems to thousands of professionals around the world. He professionally trains people on the art and science of selling. He's worked with Tony Robbins, he's put on seminars, and he can impact your audience or sales team in an appreciable way. And we're going to talk about sales reluctance, sales calls, all sorts of things selling. Eric, glad to be talking to you.
Hey, Robert, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate you being here. So did I get that right? Are you the sales number one master in the whole entire world?
I am the sales guy. I've been at this now for 20 plus years, and I live and breathe it all day, every day. And I love helping people make more sales.
Well, awesome. Well, I think that's what we all want. And you know, whenever this whole idea of like a sales call or a one-on-one selling or any of that comes up, what comes to mind is it probably took me between maybe the ages of like 16 to 19 to finally step up. I told myself for a super long time, I'm just this, right? I'm just a computer programmer. I'm just a business person, entrepreneur. And then once I finally bit the bullet and I was like, you know, this isn't so bad. It's not so bad to have a conversation, see what people's needs are, tell them about my offer, handle objections, figure out all this kind of selling stuff. Like I felt like I finally was able to like put myself out there and get the attention that I need. And it kind of boosted my confidence so I could ask for what I want and not be like struggling so hard for people to like find me and find my websites. And even with all this new technology, it seems like this is never going away, right? This whole talking to someone one-on-one. And if anything, maybe it's even increased, right? With the ease of use of Zoom and LinkedIn and things like that.
Yeah, well, when you come together one-on-one in a Zoom, a face-to-face meeting, or a phone call, that's where the magic happens. And that's part of the sales process. So we're putting on our sales hat when we're doing that. And there's a problem. And the problem is there's a stigma to sales in our culture. So there's a lot of people out there that are entrepreneurs. They've got resistance to selling. They're trying to use, as you alluded to, technology as a way to avoid the sales conversation. And what I would advise is use technology to create the sales conversation and learn how to embrace sales as opposed to resisting it, and watch your sales results skyrocket.
And so what has you turned on excited lately? What, as far, because you can go in all kinds of directions talking about this whole sales thing, but what is Mr. Eric Lofholm's current passion, problem, project focus?
You know, it's really about helping people make more sales. I'm personally excited about working with people one-on-one. So my business plan for this year is working with 60 people one-on-one to help them take their results to a higher level. I work with a few corporate clients as well, but I'm just really passionate about demystifying the sales process for people. It's a learned skill. So anybody can learn it. Anybody can learn lead gen. Anybody can learn appointment setting, closing, objection handling, referrals, and helping people see that as a possibility that they can measurably improve their sales skills.
And so what do we need to know? Because like you throw out all these keywords, and what was kind of going through my mind when you were talking about, you know, lead gen and all these things was that like there's a whole like universe of people, and only a small subset are the ones that are going to buy from me. And what was going through my head was like kind of narrowing down, like, are they the kind of person that like, do they have a budget for this? Are they interested in what I'm selling? Do they have time to like listen to me? And so like, what's kind of like the big picture, the roadmap? Because like, it's easy to just get lost in the weeds, right? Of saying like, oh, all these keywords as far as sales goes.
Well, I'll give you a really practical idea that most of the listeners could take this one idea and significantly increase their results. And it has to do with looking at somebody, instead of looking at them to sell your product or service, you look to leverage their network. So if you think about Starbucks went to Barnes and Noble and said, you have our customer. So put our Starbucks over in the corner of your store, and every cup of coffee we sell, we're going to give you a little piece of the action. We'll give you some rent. They got into that initial store. It rolled out to 500 stores, and they did it with grocery stores. They did it with Target. They did it in airports as a strategy. So what did Starbucks do? They looked for somebody who had their customer and they leverage that network. So instead of looking at somebody to deliver your sales presentation, which that's one concept, is to look for somebody who has your customer, build a relationship with them and get them to refer or endorse you to their entire network. And that solves your lead generation problem. That's one example of one idea that many people could apply that could bring them a tremendous number of leads.
And that's like what we're doing here, right now at this exact moment, right? You're on my podcast, not just for your health, but to come and demonstrate some value and teach some cool things. And you're leveraging my existing podcast audience. And instead of you having to chase individual people, you're going one to many in that way.
We're doing that, but we're also doing something else, which is creating content, which is a whole nother strategy. So any of you that are watching and listening to this right now, you want to consider content as part of your strategy, because if you're creating content, it positions you as an expert. So it shapes the listening with your prospects, and it's a tremendous leverage, because once we've completed the recording of this, it's done. Somebody could be listening to this 5 or 10 years from now. So a real estate agent could use this concept. Somebody who does loans, a network marketer, a coach, a consultant, fill in the blank. So many industries, content can be done as a strategy. And then you make yourself attractive to find people like me to want to be on your show because you have a show. So those are a couple of additional ideas that people can think about to enhance their brand and grow their business.
Yeah, there's like 17 different ways we can use this podcast, right? I mean, if I was trying to get someone on my show as a guest, I could say, hey, check out this really cool recording with Eric that we had. And we talked about sales and we talked about this exact subject. And you could even use this clip, vice versa. And there's just so many cool things that we could do with this. And so you're reminding me of, I had another kind of an aha, maybe when I was like 21 years old, where someone said something along the lines of like, blend your content and your selling. And because this was when everyone was so worried about, well, if I send emails or if I make social posts or whatever, either I'm just teaching so many things, and why would anyone buy from me if I'm just giving away all my secrets? Versus if I'm hard selling somebody, maybe they're not ready for that. And when I just heard this concept of kind of blending your teaching and your selling, I thought that's so cool, because that means that you could almost send like a daily email to your list with that sort of mindset, or you could have like a daily podcast like this and someone could listen to our whole episode right here. And at the end, of course, we're going to plug your website, your book, like a discovery call, things you have for selling. But if you say, I'm absolutely not going to buy at all, I can choose to turn off the episode right at that point. But if I have been kind of micro committed through the episode up until the selling part, and I can just continue on and say, I liked what Eric told me so far. I got even a few quick tips and a few things that I could implement. Now I want to keep the conversation going. So blending the content and the selling, that's kind of what you reminded me just now, and talking about we're creating content.
Well, you said two things that I think are I want to highlight. And one is, you mentioned about if you were wanting to get a guest and you thought our recording and sharing the recording with the guest would help them come and join your show. Now we're using content as part of our prospecting strategy. So that's a very powerful idea that anybody could use in any industry. The real estate agent could send a piece of content to a prospect as a way of getting them connected to their expertise. And then another thing is that people do business with people that they're familiar with. So the more familiar you can get somebody with you, the more likely they are to buy from you. So if you and I are here for, say, 20 minutes and somebody listens to the full episode, they just spent 20 minutes with you and 20 minutes with me, and it brings them that much closer to making a buying decision. So anytime we can further the familiarity with a prospect, it just plays in our favor. So just having a thought in your mind, how can I create more familiarity with my prospects so they get more comfortable with the possibility of buying from me?
I like that. Know, like, and trust. And it's kind of reminds me of like just sometimes there's that ideal prospect, that customer, and they want to buy from you, they will buy from you, but the timing is just not quite right. I mean, I guess realtors have this a lot where you're going to be in the market to sell or buy a house in like 5 years from now, but no matter what that realtor does right now, it's just not going to happen. The timing's not quite right. But if you're kind of still on their radar, then there you go. And so that's kind of, it seems to me like that takes some of the pressure off, right? Because if you're just thinking of, I'm helping out, I'm teaching, I'm kind of just staying on someone's Facebook feed, I'm staying in their email inbox, and then when the timing is right, then I don't have to go 5 miles of distance from the beginning until maybe they'll buy from me. But now I only have to go like a quarter mile or half a mile. I'm already a lot of the way there because they've maybe already overcome some of those objections, and they already have some of that familiarity with me because they've been participating in these 20-minute segments for maybe once a week or a month for like a year or two, right?
You're exactly right. And I had a client up for renewal for coaching, and he chose not to renew. So I sent him a Facebook message today and I said, hey, I created this piece of content yesterday. I think you'll really enjoy it. So off it went. I sent it to him with a direct message on Facebook. I'm not asking him to buy from me again. I'm just sending him a piece of content. So let's say he listens to 20 minutes. Now I'm top of mind for him. I'm on his radar. So he might go, oh yeah, you know what? My results, they've gone down a little bit since I stopped coaching. Hey, let me get back into coaching. So that was a very strategic message I sent him that was a non-sales message, but it was a sales message because I'm furthering the familiarity. And there's all kinds of ways that you can use this strategy if you choose to create content as part of your sales strategy.
And I'm loving our conversation so far, Eric, where it seems like you're really a salesperson in the sense that you kind of agree with everything I say, and it's very like going with the flow. You're throwing in fun tips, you're throwing in fun stories, and you're reminding me that there's all these things that we should be doing every day, but it's really hard to stay consistent. And I've been really deliberately for the past like 4 or 5 years or so trying to just do like a handful of things like what you're describing every single day. Like, for example, about an hour or two ago, I introduced 2 people I knew on Messenger. I had a podcast guest, and then I had a really long time customer email me about something he's working on, and I just introduced them again for like a not really an ulterior motive, but also sort of just to kind of, like you're saying, it's like kind of moving things forward, but not really expecting any kind of sale just yet, just kind of, keeping things in motion. And then I reconnected with an old client that I used to work with every single month, and it's been maybe about 3 or 4 months. And I was just like seeing what he was up to, and he has a new book out, and I went and pre-ordered his book again, like sure, probably for kind of sort of selfish reasons, but also at the same time, just to put out the good in the world. And then knowing that it's a numbers game, that if I'm sweating every single sale, or if it all rides on this one conversation, that's not a good place to be. But if I'm putting out so much like little pings here and there whenever the opportunities present themselves, then I feel like it's kind of stacking the deck in my favor in a way.
You're exactly right. And I have a very similar philosophy. And the first thing you shared there was the 3-way introduction. So when you bring 2 people together, they're far more likely to take each other's call because you connected them. And so we can be the connector. Or we can ask somebody, like if you had somebody that I wanted you to introduce me to, I could say, hey, Robert, could you do me a favor? Could you do a 3-way introduction for me to so-and-so, right? So we can connect people, or we can ask somebody to connect us, and that's powerful. And then when you buy the book from your friend who did the book launch, or we just are doing good in the world, I call that social currency. So if we're doing something nice for somebody, to your point, they don't now owe us, but we did some good in the world. So like when you did the 3-way introduction, all of a sudden tomorrow, one of them might do a 3-way introduction for you. It's like, how did that happen? Well, you did something nice for them, and then they don't owe you a 3-way introduction, but they might be willing to do that. And so the more we just kind of show up in the world in a way of adding value, it just kind of karmically works in our favor, that it shows up as luck, but it's not really luck. We created the luck out of our beingness.
And I'm fully aware, like 10X is a concept that comes up in all sorts of different ways, right? And I'm just thinking in my head, like, okay, I'll probably put 10 good things out in the world and probably only get 1 back, and that's totally okay, right? I'm not expecting a one-to-one in any sense at all.
And yeah, and what you're saying is I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. But again, it's not really luck. I'm just constantly just putting out good. Like I do a 15-minute call every day, 5 days a week. I don't charge for it. 150 people or so are doing it live, but we also publish it as a podcast. So I'm just putting out all this good. Well, when I'm putting out all that good, a lot of good comes back. I get referrals, or they end up ultimately buying from me, or whatever the case may be. And so I'm causing that goodwill out of how I'm showing up. And so I think it's just a good idea. Have a good old fashioned positive attitude, go out there and put good out into the world, and good does absolutely come back.
And I agree completely that what's the point of being negative? And it might take a little bit of effort in being positive, but why not do the things that you were going to do anyway, but also be positive? And this is the kind of thing that sometimes I think about when, like, if I'm stressed out, right? And I think, well, is the fear, or is all the bad stuff, is that really serving me, right? If I'm going to be thinking these same things and having the same kind of input, like facts or information, and I'm going to be taking the same kinds of output activities anyway, how does it help me at all if the whole time I'm having negative thoughts, or like being depressed or being pessimistic? Why not do all those things anyway, and then make the effort to maybe be positive, or like force myself a little bit to be enthusiastic, or try to find the good things in that. And the reason why that is the thought that entered my mind. So you mentioned this 15-minute call 5 days a week. And I love that kind of energy. And that's the kind of thing like I'm always trying to tap into. And you always hear about these sales guys, they make like, 300 calls a day, or just they do these massive numbers. And I'm always thinking about, okay, how do I get my brain to get to that point, right? Of saying, like, how do I flip a switch and say, here's what I need to do. Here are my goals. I can always find the time to spend 15 minutes on that, but how do you commit and how do you stick to something like that 15-minute, 5-day-a-week call?
It's a great question. And one of my experiences of life is that we experience things in large part to what our language is. So if I'm on a coaching call with somebody and they say, Eric, I am inconsistent. My response is, I believe you. If you tell me you're inconsistent, if that's your declaration, so I'll give you the distinction, my interpretation of the difference between an affirmation and a declaration. An affirmation is words. A declaration is a way of being. So if I say I'm a prospecting master and it's just words, like I'm not actually being a prospecting master, I'm just saying it, that's an affirmation. If I'm being a prospecting master, if I'm showing up consistently and hitting my prospecting numbers every day, now I'm being a prospecting master. So here's something I stumbled across. It's the declaration of I am self-control mastery. So if you show up as self-control mastery, all of a sudden you're consistent. Snap your fingers, you're consistent. You follow through on your prospecting. You get yourself to the gym. You do the things that you say you're going to do. Why? Because you're being self-control mastery. You mentioned a moment ago that you're being positive. You have a way of being, you just look at life, you tend to go to the positive way. So it's not words, I am a positive person. No, you're being positive. Therefore, in my world, that's a declaration. So you or anybody listening could be self-control mastery, and all of a sudden your whole world would change.
So how do we get there? Because it's one thing to say, well, I'll say the words and I'll kind of like re-examine myself every day to make sure that I'm being what I'm saying. But isn't it easy to fall off it after a week, or to be like excited for a little while and then it falls off? Yeah,
it's predictable. It's like going on a diet, right? You want to change what you eat. That's not an easy task. So all of a sudden you go, I am a diet master. I eat what I say I'm going to eat, right? So then the problem is, to your point, now you slip off, you fall off the wagon, if you will. And what a lot of people do is now they live into the story, I can't get myself to follow through my diet. And then I say, I believe you. So here's the thing. When you quote unquote fall off the track, what it is we're lifting weights. If I want to get stronger, I got to go in the gym. I got to lift weights. If you want to be self-control mastery, you got to work at it. So when you fall off the track, you got to go, okay, I fell off the track. Now I got to get back on track. Self-mastery is a skill set. It's a muscle. Okay. So I got to work the muscle. So when I fall off track, I got to examine my thoughts. I got to examine my behavior. I got to look at, well, why did I fall off track? Am I committed to self-control mastery? And then if you are, you get back on track. But what most people do is they just wave the white flag and they go back to living in a story. I can't do it. And that's not true. It's not true to say I can't consistently prospect or I can't stay positive. Or I can't do this. It's a muscle. If you listen to Tony Robbins, or do you know the name David Goggins?
I've heard it, but
He's
I know
got
Tony
the
Robbins
pull-up
better.
record. Most pull-ups in 24 hours, although it just got beat. He did over 4,000 pull-ups in 24 hours. And he's this ultra athlete guy. And he's like the master of mind control. Okay. And so David Goggins and Tony Robbins are super achievers. And what they both share in common is they both say, I created me. In other words, when they fell off the self-control mastery path, they got themselves back on track and they worked at it like a muscle. So I'm like, well, I can do that. Even me, former college dropout, former cook at McDonald's, bottom producing sales guy. That's me in the past. Even me can be self-control mastery. If I can do it, you can do it, or any of our listeners can do it. So it's recognizing that if we fall off track, then we got to just keep working at it. And look at any superstar. They weren't born that way. Billy Joel, when he plays Piano Man, how many thousands of times has Billy Joel played Piano Man? So when he does a concert, he gets a standing ovation. He worked at it. So self-control is something we got to work at. And it's available. Anybody can choose it. It's not easy, but it's doable. And I learned that. And so now if I say I'm doing 25 prospecting touches a day, then I do it. 98% of the time, I'm going to follow through and I'm going to do it. Why? Because I am self-controlled mastery. I live into that story.
I love it. And that analogy of with the muscle, you're reminding me that I haven't thought about that in years. I used to think in terms of when I was trying to get good at webinar presentations, I was thinking in terms of like the webinar muscle, that if I hadn't used it at all, if I hadn't used it in a while, I would be really rusty. But then if I kept at it, and then this would be automatic and that would be easier. And the next thing I know, I'm doing it without even thinking about it. And I'm even like itching or excited to do it. And then if I take too long of a break, then guess what? I kind of start losing the muscle mass or gaining the pounds again. And I noticed that it was one of these things where I had to work at it until next thing I know, it was effortless, but I didn't realize until I had gotten past a certain point. And to get to that point, it was just so much work and so much failure and so much frustration. But then there's like that middle section where like you don't even realize you're getting past it. You don't even realize that it's gone from being the hardest thing you've ever done or you're completely miserable to like now it's just like tying my shoes. And same thing with like writing blog posts or the content muscle, kind of same idea of like strengthening the muscle. So you're reminding me of like just all these little mental tools in the toolbox. And I'm sure you have this, Eric, where some weeks or some days you're like, I just need some new technique or some new way of thinking about it. And you're reminding me of the dang muscle concept. So that's pretty cool. So we've talked about all kinds of interesting sales tips, new ways of thinking about it, ahas that you've had. And so as we're kind of starting to get near the tail end of our conversation, do you have any kind of insights into what people are missing out on these days? What are they not doing? Because like some of these simple ideas, like, contacting my top 10 or my top 100 customers with quick videos. That's like so simple, but I don't always do it. Or it was only a few years ago, I discovered a CRM and having like a unified system and like knowing where your customers are on a map and a lead score. There's all these simple ideas out there. So is there a simple idea that you think everyone should be using, but it seems almost no one is using? Anything come to mind?
Well, the one for me is prospecting. So people are trying to do everything they can to avoid prospecting because they're afraid of rejection. And I don't look at it in terms of rejection. I just look at it and say, if I prospect, I create the possibility of winning. When I prospect, I say, Eric, great job. And when I book the appointment, I say, great job. So I win or I double win. I don't look at it in terms of rejection. My commitment to myself is to reach out to 25 people a day, 5 days a week. I'll prospect with a direct message on social media like Facebook or LinkedIn. I'll text. When you and I communicate, we do it over email. I do a phone call. Occasionally, I'll do a walk-in. So I have a number that I'm committed to hitting. So anybody watching this could just have a number like 5. I'm going to reach out to 5 people a day to grow my business. It could be a follow-up. It could be a cold message. It could be an existing client. Like what you were doing, where you checked in on the one person, then you bought their book that you shared earlier on our session today. So pick a number and then be that commitment and follow through. I looked at my business and I said, hey, if I do 25 a day for a year, 5 days a week, oh my gosh, my business is just going to explode. And so I up my prospecting, and all of a sudden my calendar is filled with all these awesome opportunities because I'm going and I'm getting it. No budget required. You don't need to have a Facebook ad budget. I don't need an assistant to do it, although I have, an office manager. I don't need any staff to do my personal reach outs. It's so simple when you really think about it. So that to me is something I do and I'm passionate about.
Well, fantastic. And I mean, you're getting all these gears turning in my head because a project I launched into a couple of weeks ago is doing some prospecting on LinkedIn, like finding authors that need audiobooks. And I've been kind of trying to find some gigs for my wife. And I'm starting to think like, we've been sending out these messages and gotten a few bites, gotten a few calls, gotten a few sales. And I'm thinking like, okay, so right now I'm just putting things out there and like tweaking the offer, tweaking the message. And I'm in the phase of just like putting things out there. But once I kind of get some raw numbers and I know if I talk to A number of people and I get B number of people responding, and that leads to C number of sales, then I can kind of reverse engineer that and then say, well, then now I know for almost for certain. And when I do 5 reach outs per day, what the equation will then spit out on the other end. And that seems to be more like being an adult, right? And more encouraging and just all these other things where it's more predictable. And ahead of time that all I need to do, kind of like you were saying there, all I need to do is just do my 25 calls. And I know that based on the math with law of averages, sure, it might have like a bad day or a bad week. But if I stick to 25 calls, I know that it will equal this number of sales, this amount of money. So then really each call is like getting, $200 in my pocket. So then it seems like right. once you have your data, it seems encouraging, but you need to take action, have the muscle, go out there and get the initial results first. And then maybe go back and look at your past results and think logically. But when you think about all that, it is simple if you think about it, if you let it be. And the sales thing can be exciting for anyone, it seems.
It can be a lot of fun. And what I would add to your LinkedIn idea, you can also mix in some Facebook messages. All those people on LinkedIn, most of them are on Facebook. A lot of times you can find their email address pretty easily. If you Google them, sometimes you can get a phone number. So you can do the LinkedIn, but add in, if they're not responding, do a little Facebook, do a little text, or do a little email, however you can get a hold of them. But I love that. And I love what you just said. If you just keep doing it consistently, if you've got a good campaign, you're going to get great results.
And I have been doing a little bit of that. If they don't respond on LinkedIn, then we look them up on Facebook. And then I have another column for some of my VA employees to then look up their website and their contact information. And I might make another column for the physical address. I'm not really a call on a phone type of person, but send a quick thing in the mail, physical address. And it just reminds me of, there's been so many times in my life when I finally bought from someone just because they followed up with me so many times. And I would be really impressed because, and it mystifies me that so few people do it, right? So few people actually like send more than a couple of messages like to us, right? Like I hired someone as a coach a few years ago, and she sent a like, congratulations on your wedding little just postcard in the mail. And it probably took her like 30 seconds, but because she was organized and she had a system and she noticed that kind of thing, that paid off about $4,000 for her just from a little 30-second sending a postcard in the mail. And things like that are just really kind of inspiring, right? When I think like, man, I bought from that person just because they put me in the sequence, and the sequence seemed to work for them. So there's so much to think about and wrap our heads around. And for people watching and listening, go back and listen to this 3 or 4 times. But if you have been super impressed with Eric like I have, and your brain is just like literally like a firing inferno, it's a bonfire and you want to take the next step with Eric and you want to find out more of what Eric has to tell you. I mean, if you just got this from Eric's conversation, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So what the heck else does Mr. Eric Lofholm have in store for us here, Eric?
Yeah, well, good thing for people to do. If you like the message today, if you want to connect, I'm the only Eric Lofholm on the planet. So if you Google me, if you're an Instagram person, find me on Instagram. If you're a YouTuber, find me on YouTube. If you're LinkedIn, if you're Facebook, my website is ericlofholm.com. So we got all kinds of free ways to connect with you. Yeah, I have paid services as well, but I'm a big believer in try before you buy. So try some of my free stuff out, my daily call, my YouTube channel, whatever the case may be. And that's a great way to get started. It doesn't require any financial investment. I've got hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel, the daily calls every single day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So there's a lot of ways to just take a next step that don't require financial investment. And then if you are looking for a coach, we can absolutely hop on a call, do a free 30-minute coaching session, see if there's a fit, or if you need a speaker for your convention, we can have that conversation. But just find me on Google, connect with me however you like to connect, and that would be a great next step.
Well, fantastic. And just to make sure that everyone knows how to spell your name, that is Eric, E-R-I-C, and last name is L-O-F-H-O-L-M, Eric Lofholm. And you remind me, Eric, that if I'm having kind of like a down day or I want to get inspired, motivated, then I will have something on in the background, right? You mentioned things like Tony Robbins, and sometimes it just helps to have or even affirmations, right? Have a little something on in the background. So going with your try before you buy concept, I think that literally everyone who's watching and listening to this episode needs to subscribe to your YouTube or subscribe to your social media right away, if for nothing else, than to have your content and have these daily calls playing in the background, because I think that we can all use some of these extra sales skills and some of these extra confidence and, doing the yes and figuring out people's objections and staying silent when you want to be silent and all those other kind of like sales tricks that they're super cheesy and they're cliche, but they work. They're the fundamentals, right? When you go and lift weights in the gym, you're not saying this is a brand new weightlifting system we just invented in the last 2 years. You're pulling the same exact weights that like Jack LaLanne or whoever else pulled all these other last few centuries. You're sticking to the fundamentals, what works, what does work, what has always worked, what will always work is this thing called selling. And you can make it match to your personality, make it soft selling, make it easy. And so the way to take the next step, the way to pursue your dreams and get everything you've ever wanted is to go to Eric Lofholm's social media, add him wherever you can and get him in your head, get him in your ear, because you're going to want and need his help to grow your business. And like Eric said, once he has kind of got you on the know, like, and trust train that we've been talking about a little bit here, then it may be time to contact Eric and do one of those free 30-minute calls to see if it makes sense for him to train your sales team or to speak at your event or do whatever the logical next step is. So as we are winding down this last minute or so, Eric, do you have anything to add? Did I overstep anywhere? Did we leave anything out? What do we say and do here to wrap up this excellent conversation we're having?
Well, I would just like to end with optimism is a learned skill. Optimism is a muscle. So you were talking about being positive, and somebody listening right now might be like, well, I'm not really that positive. And they say it as a declaration. I am not that positive. So just know it's a muscle. You can learn how to be positive. You can learn how to be optimistic. And so that'll be my final idea for everybody today.
I love it. Learn to be optimistic. And the very first step, the next step to learn that skill, that optimism skill, is to go to Eric Lofholm on social media. So we see you there. And thank you, Eric, for stopping by and helping us learn this skill of not only sales, but optimism as well. So thank you, Eric.
You're welcome, Robert.